It feels like
Uh-oh.
we are entering the final stretch of the Jim Harbaugh experience at Michigan.
Uh-oh.
Jim Harbaugh, who will be suspended the first 3 games of this upcoming season. He's got a bunch of different assistants who are going to be filling in for him, 4 to be exact. He's got his dad as part of the staff. This is all going back to the COVID violations for Jim Harbaugh, not the cheeseburger that he purchased for a player reportedly.
Uh-oh.
And the fact that they had a deal done with the NCAA, and then all of a sudden the NCAA backed out of the deal at the last minute. And so then Michigan had to self-impose this 3-game suspension. And so Jim Harbaugh opened up his press conference yesterday and decided now's the time that I'm going to go ahead and air out the NCAA for what I feel is an unfair and non-existent revenue split with the players. And so let's take a listen to the Michigan head coach.
I want them to be treated with the respect and the dignity that they deserve. What I don't understand is how the NCAA, television networks, conferences, universities, and coaches can continue to pull in millions, and in some cases, billions of dollars in revenue off the efforts of college student athletes across the country without providing enough opportunity to share in the ever-increasing revenues. In my opinion, when we capitalize on the talent, we should pay the talent for their contributions to the bottom line. I'm calling for a system that is fair, equitable, and benefits all involved. Don't exclude the student athletes from the profits. You can't say you're about diversity, equity, and inclusion if you aren't willing to include the student athletes in revenue sharing. We have to try to make it work, and we do. We have to try to make it work. We have to try to make it better, and right now, the current status quo is unacceptable and won't survive.
There is your Michigan head coach, Jim Harbaugh, letting it know that he is not happy with the current setup of the NCAA and the non-existent revenue split with the players there in college football.
I just always find myself like here. So I've learned a lot about collectives and how the collectives are being put in place to be able to help monetize the schools and pay the players. Now, there's a couple ways to go about paying the players. One way is through nonprofit deals that are done. So you do a deal with the collective, does a deal with the player gets paid X amount of dollars, and that X amount of dollars is basically paid through a 501c3, which is a nonprofit, non-taxable entity. And so when you do that, you're now talking about donations are the way that you're able to, compensate these players by them doing their appearances and different things like that. I always just find myself curious when you get a coach of the magnitude of a Harbaugh and they start talking and preaching about things like that. I just wonder, are they putting their money where their mouths are? Because Jim Harbaugh makes about how much a year? 10 million a year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Well, why not donate $6 million of that? Or, after, before, after, I don't know. Why don't you donate $6 million to your collective? Then you put $6 million into the collect. Now, I don't know if it's legal.
He's actually, I'm seeing a little over $7 million a year.
I don't know if it's legal or not. I guess you would have to check the rules, but I can't see how there would be an issue with you donating to a charitable foundation. So take half of your paycheck, because I always said it's so funny to me when you hear these coaches talking crazy about how players should be paid and trying to kind of, entice the general public to buy into what it is that they seem to be, which is an advocate that's being outspoken about the politics and the policies that surround how players are compensated moving forward. But I would just be curious as to if you're allowed to donate money And if you're allowed to donate money to nonprofit charities, like if Jim Harbaugh wanted to give $5 million to Make-A-Wish, what would be stopping him from being able to give $5 million to Make-A-Wish?
Nothing.
So if you gave $5 million to Make-A-Wish and $5 million is being used towards benefiting kids that are in Make-A-Wish, then you did something amazing. If you donated to a nonprofit that is benefiting your college athletes, and those college athletes are getting paid to go to those Make-A-Wish Foundation situations, spend time with those kids, or Special Olympics, spend time with those kids, do camps for these kids, go sit in the hospital rooms with these kids, give your money. Put your money where you're putting your criticisms and you're putting your and listen to me. I feel like let's start there. Let's start there, because these coaches are making a king's ransom to coach. So donate it. Donate it to these collectives so that they can pay the players. Donate it.
He strikes me as somebody who doesn't care if he ends up getting canned after this season. I think he's over college football.
That's what you took from the interview?
Yeah, well, I took the fact that he's choosing this path to air out the NCAA, and it's not the first time he's made comments like this, but they're in the middle of a 3-game suspension for him, violations, recruiting during the COVID dead period and all that. And the first game of the season is coming up, and he opens up the press conference with a state on college football.
Well, because the NCAA is losing ground.
Oh, yeah.
It's losing ground, and it looks as though it's being decentralized, right? Like, everybody continues to have conversations about how these conferences are working to become independent of the NCAA, and how that would look. I mean, if you really think about it, the NCAA has been pimping college athletics. Pimping.
Of course. And he brings up the network TV deals, which, look, all of that, I mean, those schools are getting paid millions and millions of dollars with these TV deals. I look at it almost as, before he gets out, he wants to let everybody know what the problem is. Because I think he also recognizes that as much as he complains about it, it's probably not going to get changed, especially while he's in college football.
But it's going down that lane.
Yeah.
So you want to be remembered as someone who was a champion and a hero of the people.
Yeah, like I tried to tell you.
Yes.
I tried to tell
you. But he's
guys.
talking about something that's already like that. That Kraken dam is already there. The water's already leaking through. Like, you're not the catalyst. So to be connected to those conversations, which he probably will end up being connected to those conversations. Like, you remember when Jim Harbaugh was, or Jim Harbaugh. Jim.
Yeah.
You remember when he was championing, paying players at the college level, and he said this years ago, this, that, and other. I don't think he's saying that because he's on his way out and he doesn't care what happens. I think Harbaugh wants to continue to coach. I think he probably wants to continue to coach at Michigan until he gets the right opportunity at the next level again. And then I think he'd go back to the pros. But what I will say is that it is an interesting observation that you have kind of old school establishments like Michigan, like institutions of what football represents, and you have a coach that's within that institution speaking on things that are progressive and forward. And so when you look at it from that angle, it just becomes an interesting conversation, because how many more coaches are going to come out and start, Deion has probably made it very uncomfortable for a lot of established coaches.
Of course.
Because he's building a brand. Now, while I will say, one of my interesting observations about Deion, and some people, probably have noticed it and seen it, he's brought the attention, and he's put a lot of attention on the program, and he's created a lot of excitement around the program. He's brought a lot of players in. But the branding and the influence has really all been surrounding him. He's leveraging his own brand to do it.
Yeah.
the first coach that's able to leverage their own brand and build and leverage the brands of these players where it's like legitimized, like, whoa, like they're out front and how they're marketing and advertising the school, that's going to be interesting because now the conversation is going to have to shift away from what it looks like and appears to be with a Deion Sanders, and it's going to go right down the lane of what Harbaugh is talking about. If you have these players, like you think about it, you watch a commercial going into the previews of the game. They're not previewing the school. They're not showing the campus of the school when they say get ready for football Saturday. They're not highlighting anything else other than the marquee players that are connected to these games that are being played in. And then once those games take place, you know what they're doing on Sports Center and all these other sports shows like Two Pros and a Cup of Joe. You find out what the biggest storyline is, the most polarizing conversation to have and what's out there, and you talk about it, and it's usually connected to an athlete and to a player. So you're totally driving the economics, the economy of what's going on in sports media. Sports media is what's paying out all of these crazy dollars for these TV deals and all that stuff, and the players aren't making anything off of it.
And I think that part of Harbaugh's frustration is the fact that the NCAA will get aggressive when it comes to him and illegal recruiting during the COVID
But they won't get aggressive
period.
About trying to figure out how to pay these players.
100%.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with that, and I think it's a valid point.
Yes,
it's very valid. You'll go beyond, like, God, man, look here. Guys were getting in trouble. Schools were going on probation because guys were trading jerseys for tattoos.
Right.
Like, you'll go all out, have all of these investigations on a guy swapping out a autographed jersey for tattoo artwork and suspend them or take games away and all this other old mess. But when it comes down to how do you figure out how to pay these players and how are you going to compensate them, you're like, oh,
kicking the can down the
hands
road.
up, like,
Yeah.
hey, we're pretty smart. We're a pretty smart
Yeah.
outfit. But, when it comes to stuff like that, we just think that student athletes should just, remain students.
You bought him a cheeseburger during the COVID dead period, 3-game suspension, 4-game suspension.
But
The whole thing's a joke.
You're auctioning off a Terrell Pryor signed jersey probably in the thousands. That man signs a jersey and exchanges it for a service from a tattoo artist, and you have a problem with it? It's just the hypocrisy that exists with how you're able to basically leverage the brands of these marquee athletes that are coming into college, and the moment that it looks like they can benefit from their own name, image, and likeness, you have a problem. But as long as you're leveraging their name, image, and likeness, there's no problem. You're leveraging their name, image, and likenesses to be able to ink deals that are crazy $1 million deals. You're marketing and advertising these brands to sell tickets, and you're not just putting like, 107,000, 118,000, like 90,000. Like, you're leveraging the brands of these athletes to sell the tickets and sell out your shows. But there's a problem with paying them. There's a problem with compensating them.
And it's the most popular college football's ever been. I mean, it's overtaken the NBA. It's now clearly the number 2 sport behind the NFL. And depending on who you ask, there's some people that prefer college football to the NFL. And still, you've got the same tired model.
All right.
Business-wise.
And then you're going to protect that to the end.
Right.
And so you might as well have somebody like Harbaugh who wants to try to further solidify their legacy by saying he was a progressive thinker, he was pro-player, he was pro-family and stuff like that. Meanwhile, that's where this is going anyway. So you get out in front of it like, you take a little bit of heat, but you already suspended anyway. Yeah. So, but I'm not saying he's wrong.
No, he's not wrong.
I'm not saying he's wrong.
No, he's 100% correct. And tis the season for people to point this stuff out. And Harbaugh apparently is letting it fly here in what could be his swan song as Michigan head coach.
Yeah, I don't know about that.